Peter Pan is an interesting character. Most interesting for purposes of this video is his choice of weapon. The most iconic form of Peter Pan is, of course, the Disney version. Here, Pan wields a dagger. This is an unusual choice. Its blade is only a quarter the length of Hook's cup-hilted rapier, making it generously 9 inches long. Also, the quillings are quite short. They barely protect his hand. A real parrying dagger is relatively long and has extended quillions to catch the opposing blade. So in short, Pan doesn't wield a parrying dagger. In fact, it's not really a combat dagger at all. It appears to be a navy dirk. Now, this makes sense from a lore perspective, given the pirates would be relatively likely to have navy weapons, and he could have stolen it. However, looking at the combatants, this makes no sense. Peter Pan is a child, so he has a naturally shorter reach. So it makes zero sense for him to choose a short weapon, compounding his weakness. In the Disney duels with Hook, Hook fights like a buffoon in order to hide how poor Peter's weapon choice is. If Hook fought properly, Peter would always be at Hook's range, so he would constantly have to defend himself but be unable to riposte or counterattack. Since he's completely unarmored while fighting a dual-wielding opponent, going to close range for infighting is suicide. I literally could not think of a worse weapon for Peter Pan than a dagger. Interestingly, the live-action versions typically give Peter a cutlass or a fencing saber, so he could fight the pirates on more or less equal footing. And the reach disadvantage is mitigated by having a teenage or adult female Peter Pan, so they're at less of a disadvantage than the original book version would be. However, the version I find most interesting is the movie Hook. Robin Williams wielded a bronze sword with a leaf blade. After doing some research, it's pretty clearly an ancient Greek xiphos, albeit with a cup hilt that doesn't really fit into any era I can find. It seems to be either carved from wood or an actual coconut shell. Now, from a lore perspective, this makes sense. Since Neverland is timeless, why would they not have an ancient weapon just lying around, and they would repair it with local materials? Now, the short sword still puts him at a reach disadvantage against the pirates, but the double edge does give him an agility advantage, which fits with Pan's fighting style. Also, a short blade would be less likely to get caught when flying through dense foliage. So that is also a very interesting thing to think about. But before we get too far about what he should do, let's look at what Peter's actual options are. J.M. Barrie's interpretation of Tir na Nog is a Caribbean island in the golden age of piracy. Peter would have access to anything he can make or steal. His potential sources of weapons are a group of British buccaneers, an inexplicable tribe of plain Indian stereotypes, and his adoptive mother's family, the Pixies. I'm going to ignore the Fae, since they could do practically anything, including magic weapons or procuring early 20th century firearms. That's just not worth considering. Secondly, what is Peter Pan's main advantage? Of course, he can fly. Extremely agilely and quite high, with no wings or other impediments, like if he was an angel. His primary opponents have 17th century cannons, flintlock pistols, and blunderbusses. As long as Peter kept moving at a fair height, he'd be practically untouchable. So when thinking about what Peter Pan should wield, since he has such an absurd advantage, why would he ever give that up. So obviously, Peter should use ranged weaponry. There's no reason for him to ever come within striking range of his enemies. Now, courtesy of his native allies, Peter has a large selection of options. Bow, blowpipe, slingshot, javelins, or even just dropped rocks. Since he doesn't have to worry about his weapons interfering with his flight, his only limitation would be how much weight he could carry. However, despite his multitude of options, there is one clearly superior weapon that Peter could and should use. That choice? Bombs. No, I'm being serious. Stolen bottles of liquor, and either horns or barrels of gunpowder, stick makeshift fuses from rope or cloth, and you have one boy with total domination of the sky against a single wooden ship and any construction on shore. Even if he didn't steal any materials, a single burning torch on the sails could easily sink the whole ship. If Peter does have to close in range, a long spear would be ideal. Get in, stab, get out. While other weapons, such as a glaive or a bartishave, would be more effective overall since they could slice in a swoop, Peter probably wouldn't be able to make them. Now, he might still use a stolen cutlass as a backup weapon, but only as a last resort, as he would obviously want to stay out of range of these bigger, stronger, fighting buccaneers. So that's how I would have had Peter Pan fight the pirates. He'd use full-out aerial incendiary warfare. Now, it wouldn't be as amusing as watching him humiliate Hook in single combat, but it would make a lot more sense militarily, and it would preserve the drama better, as it would keep the pirates threatening if they could ever bring Pan down to their level. So, thanks for coming with me down this hypothetical train of thought. If you have any suggestions for what would be a good weapon, or what the pirates could use against a flying, nimble boy child, put it in the comments down below. And thanks for listening, y'all.